Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Zach Bartles joining me. Zach, what's going on, man?
Oh, man, I'm just fighting with the technology. Slowly, day by day, losing more battles than I win.
Dealing with those interwebs?
Oh, man. I don't pretend to understand it anymore, and yet everybody in my life still comes to me and says, like, hey, you used to be in tech support, right? How do I do this? And I'm like, the last time I tried to fix my wife's laptop, I literally accidentally completely wiped the hard drive. And I was like, I'm done. No more.
That's like when I used to build computers back in the early 90s. And people are like, oh, you know about computers. It's like, no, I literally don't. Like, I was dealing with the old DOS program. Like, no, I know nothing.
Just how much can my CMOS handle? Hey, I did, though, over Easter, my grandmother and my parents came. My grandmother can't drive anymore, so my parents brought her over. Mm-hmm. Kelvin, my son's only living great-grandparent, so it was kind of cool. And she happened to have with her her laptop, which wasn't working. Uh-huh. And it was running Windows XP. And my father's like, I don't think this is, salvageable, but would you look at it? And I was like, I don't do computers oh no, that's my jam.
I know that one.
And I got it nice and optimized and going, she wanted to be able to look at her Facebook because no one has Facebook anymore except grandma's. And I got it so that she could bring up whatever the last version of Chrome that supported XP was, and it took like 13 minutes to load up like the Facebook sign-in page. And she was like, "That's fine."
That's all I need. That's great. Grandparents are awesome. I think my grandparents are still running Windows XP too.
If I had my druthers, man, I don't know where my druthers went, but if I had them, I would still be rocking Windows XP. It was so great.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people say that. Like, why did we ever have to move beyond XP? It was like their perfect operating system.
I won't go beyond Windows 7. I have that. My computer died. And by the way, this is Tech Talk, ladies and gentlemen. My computer conked out about 6 months ago. And I went to some stores, and you couldn't buy anything that didn't have Windows 10 with its stupid, I wish I was a cell phone interface that I hate so much. Yeah. And so I went on Craigslist, and I'm like, I'm going to find the newest computer that I can that still has Windows 7. And I'm very happy with the one I have, except that I hate it in all computers.
Nice. Oh, man. Well, speaking of being frustrating and having to shop frustrated, you never have to shop frustrated with Missional Wear. Like what I did there? We totally didn't set this up. I totally cheesed into that just to let listeners know. But in all honesty, Missional Wear has some great products. They just finished sponsoring our giveaway. I am getting those emails from people. We have one more week still for you to get your email into me, letting me know that you are the one who signed up and gave the review. So don't forget to email these go to 11, all spelled out in the number 15 at gmail.com, to get me your name and address so that those can be mailed off to you. So as soon as I get all those, I'm just going to do one large, massive send-off for all of that. So you will be getting your stuff within about 3 weeks, just to let everyone know. Also, I got a response over the weekend about people who were interested in like listener mail type stuff. So wanting to give feedback on listener mail or wanting to throw up questions that they could possibly ask and that we could answer. It's funny how we fooled people thinking that we actually have answers to questions they might have on this thing. We do a good job of that. But in all seriousness, if you do want to do that, you can again go to the email address, these go to 11, the number 15 at gmail.com. Or if you go to our website on Podbean, you can actually click, there's a little thing, I think it says questions or mail requests, something like that at the top. and you can click on that, and it'll send a direct link to me as well, and I'll get a hold of those, and I will pass them on to Zach and let him answer all of your questions, and I'll just sit here and laugh.
I'm not going to be your monkey boy, Nathan. You're going to answer the questions. We're going to answer these together.
That's right. This is a team effort, man. This is a team effort. Dude, I don't know if there's really an easy way to segue into what we're going to be talking about today. We were offline, and I was like, "Yeah, I think we're just going to annoy people today. Like, it doesn't matter what we say with these topics. It doesn't matter what side we fall. We're just bound to annoy someone." And
yeah, great week, by the way, Nathan, to give them the email address. Tell us what you think and how much you hate us.
Well, they already have our Twitter and Facebook, so why not one more piece of thing?
Right.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, like, we look forward to talking about any and all subjects. I think these topics, I think two of the topics we have are going to be deeply rooted in what the Bible has to say. I think one of these topics, I've gotten into discussions and debates with so many people, and I'm going to throw the first one out there on gun control. And I've come to the conclusion that, you know what, there is no biblical answer one way or the other. It comes down to what your preference is, what your thoughts are, what you believe the problems are facing, whether it's the country or individuals, things like that, on whether or not you fall in line with either, gun control, let's lock everything up, or, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, let's let the floodgates wide open and, let the people fall where they may. I'm just interested, Zach, what are your thoughts on this? We actually intentionally put this off because around the time that you were coming onto the podcast, or at least around the time we were talking about you coming on the podcast, we had the shootings down in Florida that occurred, and 17 people died. And you and I just kind of decided that we would hold off on that because I threw that out there as, hey, why don't we do that as our first one? And you were like, why don't we kind of break people into me and having me on the podcast before we jump right into that one? And I thought that was fair enough.
I felt also it was. I mean, I think it is a cop out when everybody wants to say it's not the right time to discuss this, and then they want to just wait until it goes away and then not discuss it anyway.
Right.
But I feel like there are moments when the conversation's so saturated and every possible position has been articulated in like the last 30 seconds, and one more discussion of it is, and you kind of said this. You said, what would be probably more wise would be to wait until it's starting to slide off people's attention span and then talk about it. And I thought by now it might be, but I feel like it's here with a staying power that it didn't have with the last 32 mass shootings.
Yeah.
It's really, and maybe that's just a reflection of the kind of people that are filling up my Facebook feed and Twitter feed, which is
right.
The people that I've chosen to click, follow or friend. But I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm hearing a lot of it still. So I think it is a worthwhile topic. I like how two things. One, just to acknowledge there was a very easy segue that we missed, which was I could have said that I wanted to shoot my computer. I was so angry at it because that's the last thing I said before you said there was no segue.
Right.
Shame on us for that. There's
ball.
room to grow.
Drop ball.
As radio professionals in the world of podcasting, which is not radio. The other is, I think it was bold of you to front load the discussion with like the conclusion of what you believe and where you landed. You were like, by way of introduction, here is all of my conclusions. And you don't see a lot of that.
I wanted to throw everything out there.
It sounds like you have kind of the militant moderate view, where you're going to stand firm in saying that there's no right answer. And I know that's not what you're saying. I think that where you're going to get people disagreeing with you is the large swaths of people who believe that for a Christian to even own a gun or say that they would, use a gun to defend their home or their family or their own life or the life of someone weaker than them is unchristlike and evil. And more you have the other side, the other extreme. There's a right and duty to self-defense, and a Christian man who is a total pacifist is, sinning.
Right.
And so, I know
kill them
we
all
can't.
and let God sort them out. That type of mentality.
Yeah. And like that was what Steven Seagal movie was it where he spotted somebody with that bumper sticker at the beginning, and they dropped a puppy out the window of the car. And then he takes care of the puppy the whole movie, and at the end he finds the guy by that sticker and beats the tar out of him.
Oh, what was that movie?
I don't know, but it was a good one. On the Seagal scale. But those people are out there. Not the puppy people, but the people with that view.
Right.
And I feel like everyone is going further and further out to the more extreme positions. And vilifying the other side more and more. Yeah. And, I'm a weird guy when it comes to this stuff because I do have a concealed carry license. I do frequently carry a handgun concealed. Mm-hmm. I've been known occasionally to open carry in the right setting. Mm-hmm. And yet I fully see the arguments against. I think the worst thing that could ever happen to me, one of the worst things would be to ever have to kill someone in any context. Yeah. There are gun people who kind of romanticize that. They talk about how they wish someone would try to break in, and I've got all this. No, you don't. Right. And that's how you that's how you break your spirit and ruin your life, Right. You talk to people who went overseas and fought as soldiers, obeying orders. They were issued this weapon. There wasn't all this second guessing of, should I have this? Am I prepared? They're trained there, and they have the PTSD and all that goes along with it. Yeah. You're not tougher and made out of sterner stuff than those guys. Right. I know some of those guys, and these mall ninja people on the. I'm on some reformed gun groups, and it's just crazy to me. Yeah. The whole someone will post a screenshot of a tweet. It's time to take guns away from people, and everyone piles on with, "Oh yeah, you want to come and get it, y'all." Right. Okay. If we think that's what Jesus would have us, that's the attitude that he had, which we're supposed to emulate as well. Do you even Jesus a little? Right. Yeah. What's your position? Do you? I realize it's foolish to even talk about whether or not you own guns. Putting it out there. Just as a aside and disclaimer, mine are incredibly not worth a lot and are locked up to the point where it wouldn't be worth trying to steal them. But. I don't know if you're a gun guy or what's the deal?
Yes and no. I enjoy guns. I've been out shooting several times. I enjoy target shooting. I enjoy practicing like that. I actually don't own any guns though. Usually it's going out with friends, hanging out with friends. I think part of that has to do with my martial arts background. Weapons that I own, that I train in, are things like knives, swords, so like in my garage, I have a target area that I do, and I use for throwing knives. I have a blowgun, so I use and practice my blowgun, and so things like that, are things that I own, but a lot of that has to just do with years upon years upon years of martial arts training.
Do you ever conceal carry the blowgun?
I have one that I can break down really small, and I could, but no, I have never done that. I do, however.
Hold on a minute while I put together my blowgun, Mr. Mucker.
Just wait right there. I do, however, typically at any given time, I'll have 2 or 3 knives on me because that was one of the styles that I've trained in is knife fighting.
Don't go to London.
What's that?
So don't go to London.
Yeah, well, even in Maryland, it's kind of odd because you can only carry around a concealed knife under a certain length, and so even if I have it slipped in my pocket or I have it kind of slipped in my belt, like most people would, carry their gun, something like that. It has to be a certain length. It can't be anything. I mean, I've trained with butterfly knives before. And, I can't carry those around. Those are illegal to have in Maryland. I grew up in New Hampshire, for those of you who are wondering. I just don't go around carrying illegal weapons. But, I feel like I'm prepared. I've trained in this. I'm someone who is qualified to do that. And so I do that. That's not something that I typically recommend to people, particularly students that I work with and train. And so I think there's a level where part of me is like, you know what? I don't want every, Tom, Dick, and Harry carrying a gun on the street, but I do want to see people who are properly and thoroughly trained carrying guns on the street. That is something that I'm in favor of, is people who have had the proper training, the proper practice, understand the responsibility and the amount of discipline it takes to carry something like that. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. That's a good pragmatic answer, and I agree with it entirely. And I think that I'd like to see every woman especially – and this is going to make both men and women angry for different reasons, I guess, get the proper training to be able to carry, whether it's a stun gun, taser, preferably a compact pistol of some kind,
yep.
So that so many women have them that the kind of scumballs who would think about trying to attack a woman, rape a woman, the odds just would be too stacked against. Odds are 1 out of 3 women or something has a gun and I'm going to get killed.
Right.
But what about how do you answer the common objection of, when Jesus said, love your enemies, I'm pretty sure he didn't mean shoot them, or I'm pretty sure he didn't mean pull out your butterfly knife.
Right.
And stab them. Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are going to disagree with me on this, and I'm fine with that. I've read that passage and I've studied that passage. I struggled with that passage a lot growing up, especially as some of the disciplines that I was learning in martial arts, they were very combative. Is that it? Combative?
Yeah, combative.
Very aggressive. I mean, literally when I was like 15 years old, I learned a series of techniques that taught me how to break someone's neck. And I don't say that like, in a way, I say that looking back on it, understanding that as a 15-year-old, like the gravity of what that would have done to me, because when you're a teenager, there's a lot of stuff in you that's really unbridled. There's a lot of stuff that the knowledge that I had in the martial arts was dangerous. It wasn't tempered with age and wisdom, where now I have all that knowledge, but it's been tempered by age and wisdom. It's like you said, I don't want to ever I don't want to ever be in a situation where I have to take someone's life. However, I also want to be I want to be in the place where if that's what it came down to, I am fully ready to do what is necessary to protect my family. I know a lot of the arguments. I've heard the arguments, from like Nate Saint and Jim Elliott, about when they went down to be missionaries to the Wadani tribe, and they don't know Jesus, and so we're not going to take our guns and we're not going to shoot them. And I agree. I think that's 100% true, that if God called me overseas, that wouldn't be on the forefront of my mind. And
they did take their guns, though, Nathan.
They did. You're right. They did take their guns.
They fired in the air while they were speared to death.
Right.
How insane! That's something that doesn't happen unless there's some Jesus action going on there. Wow.
Well, and I think that's the case where I'm not viewing people that I am intentionally going and ministering to in the light of like, oh, these are my enemies. And again, I know people are going to disagree with me, but when I read that scripture and I look at that scripture, and I've talked with people about that, I've talked with different pastors about that, and there's disagreement on it. But I believe firmly that is a reference to intentionally bringing the gospel to people. And if some mugger's just on the street trying to get a hold, and I think here's the thing too that I put into perspective. If it's just me that is in a situation, there's a lot of latitude, I believe, than my family, because God has given me a responsibility to take care of my family as well. And I don't believe that I would be doing that. I don't believe I would be actively taking care of my family if I just sat there and let a rapist, go after my wife, or let a mugger, sit there and, hold my wife at gunpoint. That protecting my family means I'm going to do any and all means to ensure their well-being. And so I believe that is my call as a Christian, as a Christian husband, to do that. I have a 17-year-old who is not a believer. We talked about that, I think, last week, that he's my son. He's from China. He's not a believer. I think I have a responsibility to him. So if somebody tries to injure him in some way, I'm going to do everything within my power to stop the situation as peacefully as possible. But we also know that not every situation can be stopped peacefully. Well,
I tell you what, when you say I'm not going to sit idly by while my wife is attacked, the first thing I thought of was I just get it out there. I didn't do great in like Christian ethics class in Bible college or seminary, because you come up with these. I'm sure I got a good grade, but I didn't make any friends. You get these scenarios thrown out. Like the old case of you have Jews in the basement, in Nazi Germany, and the SS comes to your door and asks, "Are you harboring Jews? Is it a sin to lie, or is it?" okay, or is it a sin, but it's less of a sin than telling them that and I remember all these people trying to come up with the most pious answer, and I just said, well, you know what I would do? I would say, someone said, I would say, come in and see for yourself. That's not a lie, and hopefully they wouldn't find them. I hid them well enough. And I said, I would say, come on in, would you like some coffee? And then while they were sitting waiting for the coffee, I'd shoot them in the head. And and I think I said it probably that kind of stuff just for the shock factor. Right. But I remember a guy saying, like, it is never okay, and he probably had an Anabaptist background of some kind. He said, it is never okay, even in self-defense or defense of others, to hurt someone or kill someone. And somebody said, what if it was your wife? What if someone came in and was raping your wife? And he said, I would get on my knees and pray. And I remember thinking, what a useless man you would be in that situation. I believe in prayer, and yet to say I'm going to pray instead of act is a cop-out. Yeah. And, there is the passage, whoever lives by the sword dies by the sword. We want to be careful. What did Jesus mean by live by the sword? Right. Does that mean you're willing to take up arms to defend people, or does that mean you are the kind of person who settles things by violence? You live by the sword. That's your life. Right. And just, the chapter before, and it's a difficult text, and there are great disagreements about what it means, but I think it's interesting timing when Jesus is about to leave his disciples, and, this falls into the Holy Week stuff we were talking about last time. Everything happened on Thursday, by the way. I think we should have like 3 Maundy Thursdays to handle,
all
the
those
prayer
texts.
Garden. So many things going on. But Jesus had sent out his disciples 2x2 and said, don't bring an extra staff, don't bring an extra cloak, don't bring an extra purse, don't bring extra food, don't bring a sword, don't bring anything. And now I say, I'm leaving, and it's, you can sense, worry is a sin, but you can sense this concern,
right.
this human, fully divine, the human Jesus, about to leave these guys, knowing it's going to be harder than it's ever been.
Yeah.
In these next few days, and he says, I'm going to go, and I say to you, if you got an extra cloak, bring it along. Extra bag, bring it, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy a sword.
Yeah.
Again, there are different ways people have interpreted that. I'm not saying it's cut and dried, but it sounds to me like Jesus, at least in terms of positive metaphorical language, and possibly just in a straightforward way, expected that there's a difference between when you are stoned to death and you just say, Father, forgive them.
Right.
Don't charge them with this sin like Stephen did.
Right.
And when perhaps you and your children are attacked along the way and you act. I mean,
yeah,
it's the kind of thing that I think a part of. I have a high view of natural revelation, of general revelation,
mm-hmm.
and I don't believe that it's rooted in the fall. That if someone were to try and grab my kid, I don't think I would think.
Right.
I think I would just act, and I believe just like a mother has a protective instinct hardwired into her ROM, to go back to the computer language. And we have that certain protective thing about our wives, our children. If you're a pastor, about your flock. Yeah. I love that scene in The Patriot when the preacher comes down with the musket, and he's like, there's a time the shepherd has to go and fight for his sheep. Right. There has been a great tradition of recognizing that there's a very limited and not something to be chased after, something to be avoided, but sometimes it can't be avoided. A very limited stripe where violence is justified. Where a just war, an attacker. If somebody is attacking the children in my church, right. Here's the thing: you better shoot me first, because you're going down. I will crawl up the aisle with bullets in my legs, and I will gnaw your legs off. I mean, I'm not going to just stand by and pray. Right. I don't get that. At the same time, I sure hope nothing like that ever happens. Right. We want peace, right? That's the whole goal. Right.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate you speaking after I did, because I think I was muddling through trying to get to what you said actually very well. That I'm a pacifist in terms of I want to see peace, but I'm a realist in terms of understanding and knowing that it's not going to happen in this lifetime. And so, whatever the government allows in terms of, putting out the effort to, again, like looking at it, we talk about looking at things from a biblical perspective. Nowhere in the Bible does it ever once command us to roll over and play dead, unless the gospel's on the line. We see that example from the disciples, but we see a very specific purpose in mind. And so that's why, like, when I look at the story of Jim Elliot and Nate Saint and all of those who went down there, I can appreciate that, because their sole focus was bringing the gospel to these people. And they were smart, because as men, they didn't bring their wives with them into the dangerous tribe at that point.
Their wives came after they died.
Right. And that was a decision that they had made later on, that the wives made later on for themselves and their children. But their husbands were like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not putting them in that kind of danger. We are willing to sacrifice. And I can understand that. I can look at my wife and be like, I'm going to put myself in this dangerous situation. Like, if there's a hitchhiker on the road, I will pick up that hitchhiker and I will take that person wherever they want to go. And I've told my wife, I don't want you doing that. Like, I'm sorry, people can call me a controlling husband, whatever. I don't care. But I do not want her doing that. My training in martial arts, understanding statistics and who is out there and who is willing to do bad things, I don't want her doing that. And so I have no problem. If I see a guy on the side of the road and he's hitchhiking and I'm heading in that direction, I'll pull over, I'll let him hop in the car, and I'll take him as far as I can take him. But I do not want my wife in that position. I do not want her putting herself in a position where she could be in trouble. And we've come to that agreement and understanding with one another that there is a difference between, you know, a 250-pound dude who's, you know, trained in, you know, combat, and my wife who is an avid reader. That's her sport, reading. You know, and that's, you know, that's what we've come to understand and appreciate about one another is like, I understand issues with safety. You know, every time I go into a restaurant, my back is always against the wall. I'm always watching the front door, and I'm always looking at where are the escape routes, because that's been ingrained in me. If something goes down, I want to know what is the safest way to get people out of here. And that's just the way I think. That's the way I process things.
Back up a minute, though. I want to make a clarification what you're saying. Were you actually? Did you say that you believe like the text like love your enemies and turn the other cheek are only apply to missionaries or ministers in the process of proclaiming the gospel and not to all Christians everywhere? No,
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily specifically in a context specific to that. I think I'm going to give a political answer here. I think the texts are difficult. I think the context in which Christ is speaking to the people about, you know, turning the other cheek, the context about, you know, if somebody asks you to, you know, carry their tunic, carry it even further. He's talking in the context of a society and a government that is oppressive and overbearing. A society where, you know, it is, you know, the soldiers could for all intents and purposes be judge, jury, and executioner, even though in that time there was a kind of due process that happened, you know, within the context and society. He's talking about these people being able to not losing their street cred and proclaiming the gospel. I think it's, to an extent, it's what we've been talking about all along. Where am I willing to burn my credit in proclaiming the gospel? You know, are there times where, you know, getting into an argument with someone is worth it for the sake of the gospel? Are there times where I need to not get into an argument because it's not going to go anywhere for the sake of the gospel? Are there times where, you know, if there is someone who is my enemy is coming after me, I need to, for the sake of the gospel, do this or do that? I think there is no one specific answer. I think that it is situational, not based on feelings. Like I hate that terminology, based on feelings, but I think it is situational, and I think you have to be aware and sensitive to the situation that you're in. And so, like, I couldn't sit here and pinpoint every situation where, you know, I would be willing to give up my life because there's the possibility that this person is going to come to know Christ. Just like I couldn't sit there and pinpoint, like, man, I'm going to take this person's life because the threat that they're posing to other people is much greater than, you know, and they're willing to take these lives. Like, I couldn't sit there and do that. I think it is complicated. And no, I don't think it's like, oh, it never applies to these situations. But I do think that it's not cut and dry like either side tries to make it. I think in one hand, you know, it's like you talk about, there are people who are like, well, we never do anything to anyone, and, you know, we kind of push it off to the side. And then there are those who are like, again, that quote, you know, kill them all and let God sort them out. And I don't think either position is cut and dry. You know, I had a discussion with my grandfather over the weekend about gun control, and he and I differ in our views of, you know, what we think. And, I could see that he was getting kind of worked up, and I said, ultimately at the end of the day, we're not the ones making this decision. The best we can do is put our voices out there, and hopefully the politicians will honor the will of the people. Hey, it was the best I could do to, settle a tense situation.
Hopefully they will. Yeah, they always seem to.
But, at the same time, it's like, no, I have very strong views on what I think, I'm a teacher. I think you and I have talked about this online. I'm a teacher. I teach in a school, and I've had discussions with people about putting biometric scanners, biometric gun safes into classrooms with guns in them, because I think that's a sound, solid idea. Teaching and certifying teachers to be able to handle a gun responsibly, and then putting those biometric safes. If you're going into a school that has 14 or more armed classrooms, you're going to think twice before going in and shooting it up. It's the same example that you gave of, arming women. If you have enough armed women out there who are responsible and know how to use a gun, then I think you're going to see a lot of that crime go down. And I think I just talked my way out of the question that you initially asked me. But all that to say is I don't think there is a simple answer. I think that there are a lot of components. I have a lot of friends on both sides of the issue who are willing to argue very fervently both sides of the issue.
I think it is a fairly straightforward. And as with any time you start just laying out, here are the scenarios in which X is acceptable, and here are the scenarios in which it is. With sex, it's easy. Inside of marriage,
right.
It's right and good and God honoring. Outside, it is not. When it comes to some of these things, you have to leave some wiggle room.
Right.
But on the whole, I think it's pretty clear that if someone, the whack you on the one cheek, turn the other cheek, it's been argued again and again that to be struck on the right cheek it's a backhanded slap. It's an insult, not a attack on your person. Mm-hmm. If it's your dignity that's being mocked, if someone's going to throw mud pies at you while you're preaching, if someone's going to throw rocks at you while you're walking down the street without the intent to kill you, but just to annoy you and try and get a rise out of you, my dignity, my any kind of sense of lifting myself up is not valuable enough for me to seek retribution in any way, or even to defend myself. I say that knowing that all you have to do is tweet sideways at me, and I go, it's a problem I have.
Sure.
But at the same time, you can find such well-reasoned and ancient criteria for when. Let's fuel the fire of the Zach is actually a Jesuit operative, because those things are out there, based on the kinds of books I've written. Don't Google my name. But I think the Catechism of the Catholic Church, not because it's my preferred confession or catechism, but because it just draws on some of the earliest stuff, lays out pretty concisely, if someone weaker than you is in mortal danger, is being attacked, you have a right, if you're able, to defend them. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to have to sit there and worry, am I sinning by using force in defending them. I feel like that is a pretty cut and dried position. It's a pretty and I think you have to decide this stuff before it's staring you in the face. Right. When am I willing, if someone's breaking into my house and I'm, able to grab my kid and my wife and usher them out the back door and call the police, or I'm able to push them out the back and get my gun out and kill them because, gosh darn it, that's my right. Mm-hmm. I'd better, as a Christian, be doing the first thing.
Right.
The stuff in my house is less valuable than the life of the person breaking in.
Right. Right.
The contents of my wallet is nowhere near as valuable the life of the desperate person who might try to rob me.
Right.
My car, heaven knows, is not worth anyone's life, and so I think I feel like it's not as murky an issue as people want to make it. And it's also at the same time not as simple as the one-sided approach often wants to make it.
Right.
It's a tension, like anything. You got to live in that tension of we serve the Prince of Peace, and we look forward to the day when there is no more death, there's no more suffering, there's no more fighting of any kind.
Right.
And all the time you've put into your martial arts will have been wasted at that point, except that it looks cool and it's good for focus and all that stuff. But which is, by the way, my son, who's been doing this stuff for years as well, is the first degree black belt. They're always like, and this is great for focus and it's great for goal setting. And he's like, yeah, I just want to spin kick stuff and break boards and learn how to like disarm people holding a sword or a knife or something. But I got off on a huge rabbit trail. But in the meantime, we live in this tension of we're in a world where we have to be as crafty as serpents and as innocent as doves, and that's so hard to do. We got to maintain it. If it's someone trying to lie about me, I can't be vindictive. I've got to rejoice. It's the last beatitude. Mm-hmm. If there's someone who wants to trip me and make me fall in the mud so they can laugh at me, I'd better not be jumping up and swinging my fist at them. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is, and in the times that I have, I don't do it as much. I feel like concealed carrying is something that's like kind of a phase for a lot of people. Uh-huh. You get the permit, you get all the toys, the in the waistband, different holsters and all the different crap that goes with it, and then you kind of get bored with it. But when I have been carrying, you realize I can't get in any kind of altercation of any kind that's not life and death, right? Because this thing is in my waist. It's within arm's reach. It's at my fingertips,
right?
And so I was at the library with my son, who was about 3 at the time. And there was a guy with his son who was probably 6 or so. And this guy was just swearing at him and belittling him and yelling at him. And I opened my mouth to say, buddy, you need to shut up. You're in the kids section of the library. You're in a library. You're in the kids section. You're talking to your kid. You're swearing. Why don't you, man up and talk to someone? And I had to stop myself and go, oh, crud.
Right.
If he wants to, take a poke at me now, this whole thing just got a lot more complicated because I'm sitting here with this. So I think that if anything, introducing the firearm doesn't make a Christian more disposed to think in terms of violence, but reminds them this is the last of the last resorts. Yeah. This is, and as a Christian, the only time I should ever defend myself with force is when it's the last of the last of the last resorts. And even then, I need to stop and think, what would Christ have me do? Is this a situation in which I could, it'd be better for me to risk dying for the gospel than to risk taking someone else's life.
Right. Yeah. And again, like I think you've put into words what I've just been fumbling through, because, I haven't been placed in those situations. I mean, for all my years of training and things, like it's funny because I'll talk to my students at times about some of the things, and they're like, have you ever been in, a serious altercation? And my answer is always no. But when I talk to them, they're like, Mr. Bell, those sound pretty serious. Like, I had a kid in high school pull a knife on me once, but I don't think his intent was to hurt me. I think he was just trying to be a punk. And so I don't consider that a serious altercation. Like, and so I've been in situations like that where people have tried to be punks and really try to do something. But because of my size, all I got to do is kind of just stand up and look at them, and it just tends to go away. It tends to de-escalate the situation. And so I think that has more to do with it, not necessarily martial arts training and background, but I mean, I've got a weight and a heft to me that just kind of, it intimidates people, who barely know me, and then someone who doesn't know me at all, is bound to just kind of stay away, walk on the other side of the road. And I'm okay with that,
Dude, have you ever seen? I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, but for me, I think it's very different for me in those situations than, advice that I would give to some of my students and things like that who are half my size, bring in the whole bullying situation and things like that, where, I mean, I'm the type of person that's like, I can deal with people who try to bully me and never throw a punch, but there are kids that are small out there where I'm like, you know what? If you've got to throw a punch, then you've got to throw a punch, and you've got to deal with the consequences of that. But I mean, it's funny because my wife and I talk about some of the laws and things like that, and it's kind of a good thing we don't have any natural born children, because I mean, I would be teaching them all the wrong things, that schools are, trying to wean out of kids and all that stuff. What were you going to say?
Something you were talking about with the knife thing. I mean, it reminded me of this video I saw a while ago, where this guy, I think it was in Thailand. Mm-hmm. It was video of him walking into a police station with like a butcher knife. Mm-hmm. And it seemed that he was indicating to them that he was intent on stabbing one of them, and probably he wanted them to shoot him, like he had just like hit bottom. Mm-hmm. And the cop came out, took his gun out, and looked like it for a minute he was going to point at him, and then he put it down. And he just talked to the guy. I couldn't understand what he was saying because it was in some of the language. Right. But it was clear that he was kind of. And all of a sudden, he just slapped the knife out of the guy's hand and just hugged him.
Uh huh.
And then it said that so then another cop came over and grabbed the knife, and they sat the guy down, and he told him that his wife had left him, and he had to just pawn his guitar, and that was the thing in his life he loved the most, was having his guitar. And the cop had a guitar at home. It was just this really glurgy, heartwarming thing, which I love on the internet. These things that make you feel good. and it's like, if only we all had. I mean, this is the situation where if somebody had the right to pull a gun and kill somebody, it's the policeman in the police station when someone comes running in with a knife.
Right. Yeah.
And yet he so didn't want to do it. He so wanted instead to hug that guy and listen to him and tell him everything's going to be okay and you don't have to be hopeless.
Right.
That's got to be where we stand. At the same time, the thing you're talking about with our kids, I do believe. I mean, God wants us to raise up our boys, especially to in a sense be warriors. I mean, I'm down with Cliff Graham and all the kind of reclaim masculinity without the over the top
right.
Stuff. But I did. It was my idea to get the boy in martial arts and get some toughness to him, so he's okay with taking a punch. Yep. So that later on, maybe he'll be okay with getting checked into the boards on the ice or something, or getting knocked down in football. That he doesn't feel like the idea of a fight is so scary. He has to do what anyone says. That men should be men, right. And I don't think, as Christians, I really don't think there's any reason for us to want to, like you say, breed that out or wean that out of us, get that out of us, neutralize that in our children.
Yeah,
that's bad things happen when men are afraid to be men.
Yeah, well, and I think, I mean, I swear I'm going to get fired from school one day for all the stuff that I say, but to me, one of the biggest shames is that we don't have the backyard school fights anymore, because people talk about, bullying being such a huge deal. And I mean, even me growing up, I can remember, issues with, this bully, and, this was when I was smaller. This was, back when I was younger, but this kid would consistently pick on people, and he came to me, and I wasn't backing down, and it came to blows, and I knocked him on his butt, and no one ever had a problem with that kid again, you know? And it was one of those things where it was like, it stopped the situation, because finally he came up against someone who wasn't going to back down from him and was going to stop it, you know? But we don't see that with this whole bullying thing in school. We just see, well, yeah, you're being bullied and that's a shame, but we really can't prove it, so we really can't do anything about it. But if you react to this person when they attack you, you know, I've heard the dumbest stuff since I've been a teacher with how to react to somebody who is physically attacking you. And it's made me so sick. Just cover your face and protect your face while they beat the crap out of you. Are you kidding me? Like, if you want to put an end to the bullying problem, you know, particularly with guys, let them take a couple punches after, you know, at one another. I mean, you know, that happens with guys who are friends. You know, you're roughhousing around a little bit and it gets a little too out of control and you're kind of ticked at each other for a while, but then you come back and it's like, hey, we're all good. You know?
Yeah. I read about an inner city school not that long ago where they had a lot of fights going on, obviously, and they started bringing guys in. They put up, one of these kind of thrown together boxing rings, like what Ted Cluck had in his basement, where you know under the boards it's all old tires, and, you know, the ropes are kind of janky, and they'd lace up some threadbare boxing gloves that they had in the utility closet. Yep. And they would have them, and once they'd gotten it out of their system, then they didn't want to, you know, drive by shoot, and it didn't build up and grow. And it's okay that guys have these things built into us. We just have to learn how to handle them in a Christ-like way. It's almost like training, though. You know, that in your mind, as you're going from being a boy to a man, you start dealing with these compulsions to protect yourself and protect others, and you have anger you have to overcome, and you have, you know, and to just say ignore all that, ignore it. Right. Well, of course we've got guys coming in and going nuts and shooting at people and stuff. We've told everyone to bottle everything up and pretend it's not there, rather than giving them healthy outlets for it. Right.
Well, we've switched from the paradigm of the Bible, which, you know, says sin not in your anger, to, you know, don't be angry. And that's the problem, is that we haven't taught people the difference between righteous and unrighteous anger, and we haven't taught them how to deal with both of those. I mean, you know, lest we forget that the anger that led David to kill Goliath was a righteous anger, you know?
Dude, if little Joey is angry, we just give him like 3 more pills to take every day.
Right. This'll calm him down. And yeah, I mean, and to a certain extent, you know, I've got friends who are on medication. I don't want people thinking, oh, well, they're against medication. No, I mean, I've got friends and students who I think, you know what, this is, to an extent, this is good for them. But I've got a lot of kids that are on it that, you know what, this isn't good for them. That, you know, there are a few other steps that could have been gone through before medication was the answer. But you're right. Today, that's the answer. Oh, they're like this or they're like that. Oh, throw the medication at them, and, you know, let's make them good little, you know, school drones. Can you tell I'm not bitter at all?
Dude, it sounds like you're like so angry. You're like angry rearranging your furniture of your office or something.
I have all these built up frustrations being in the school system with things that are just annoyingly wrong with the system. And it's frustrating. So anytime I get close to like dealing with adolescents and like problems that they have, it frustrates me to no end, because to me, I feel it's a lot like the gun control issue. It's like, no, the solution actually is pretty clear. This is what it is, but you're not focusing on the solution. You know, I've talked to several friends. It's like, oh, we need stricter gun laws. I live in Maryland. It has one of the strictest gun laws in the United States. Guess what? Baltimore has the 3rd highest gun death rate in the United States. Something's not working.
I'll never go back to Baltimore. The scariest 45 minutes of my life were there.
When was this?
1997.
Oh, wow.
Whenever Stand in the Gap was at Washington, D.C., which is the big Promise Keepers, Million Man thing. And we drove. We were like, hey, let's check out Baltimore, because it was, middle of the night, and we had made good time coming down from Grand Rapids.
Yep.
And I think 3 or 4 people intimated via either kind of charades or just verbal threats that they were going to kill us. And we were like, let's go on to downtown DC and find a place to park. So,
right.
Anyway, and I remember thinking, there's a lot of cities in this great nation. I think I'm not going to come back to this one. And granted, coming somewhere in the 20 years ago in the middle of the dead of the night on a Saturday night is probably not the best way to in not knowing where you're going or what part of town you're in. Not the best way to judge it, but
yeah, I can tell you, living 20 minutes north of there, your judgment's not that far off. I mean,
granted, I live by Detroit, and I get annoyed when people, make sweeping generalizations about it. So,
well, I'll tell you again. 20 minutes from Baltimore, I pretty much know the places to go and not to go. Whether it's day or night down there, and I've been to New York over a half dozen times. New York City, Manhattan. And I never, ever feel like I'm in danger. But Baltimore, oh man, there are times where I'll be driving through and you've got the one-way streets and you take, the wrong turn down the wrong one way and you're just like, roll up the windows, lock the doors. Did we put the bulletproof glass on yet?
Dude, yeah, that's where I assume that you listen to Serial, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
That was in Baltimore, wasn't it?
The Saeed case, right? That was close. It was around the other side, so you're probably talking another 20 minutes outside of Baltimore, but it's
okay. I remember them saying that there's park where she was found, like they find a body there like every 2 weeks or something.
Yeah. And so probably what's going on is the murders are happening in Baltimore, and then they're driving them out to that parkway. But actually Greg remembers that whole thing exactly, because during the whole time it was going on, like he was down living around that area where it happened. So, he could have some explaining to do.
Oh, that's not funny. I mean, all right. You laugh, and on the record, I didn't find that funny.
Sorry.
Hey man, we're not going to, and I'm thankful, honestly, that we're not going to get to Thabiti because of the time.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe instead, to try to calm you down and leave the podcast with a good kind of positive feeling, we should talk a little bit about. Did you watch the new clip that they released today for the Cobra Kai show?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen that yet. Is it on IMDb?
I don't know. I saw it on YouTube. Like it had the big recommended for you at the top. I think their algorithm realized that since I watched the original trailer for Cobra Kai roughly 72 times, that I probably wanted to see this exclusive clip.
Nice.
Dang, it's looking good.
Nice.
Dude, Johnny Lawrence is the sensei training the bullied kids about how to defend themselves and kind of stand up and be but with the Cobra Kai system that Kreese used with him, it looks so funny and so fun. I cannot wait for it.
Oh, that's great. I will definitely have to check that out when we get off. I will definitely have to check that out. That is so cool. I was thinking, because I saw on your I think it was like Twitter or Facebook or something, that you had been watching Into the Badlands.
Yeah. We talked about that on the Gut Check podcast today.
Oh, did you?
How that one's a compelling turd. Yeah.
That's funny. How far have you got?
Cool fight.
How far have you got into it?
I think I have 2 left, and I'm done with it.
Okay.
Up to speed anyway. It's like some of the best fight choreography though I've ever seen. Just spectacular. The wire work, the CGI, just little touches that doesn't make it feel fake. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, I've been I'm on the last one right now from season 2. Did season 3 come out yet? Do you know?
No, I don't think so. If season 3 is out, then I'm not getting close to the end. I'm just nearing the end of season 2.
Okay. So yeah, I'm just finishing up, but to me, this is kind of what we were talking about, several weeks ago when we brought up like 80s and, the movies and like how you have, these kind of like trained martial artists and, actors and things like that versus today. This show kind of reminds me of that style, where you had like, all right, so we're going to, throw some people in there, although I think the people in there can act slightly better than some of the 80s actors that they got.
I don't know, man.
I said slightly.
That main guy, what I said to Ted on the gut check was he's supposed to be this like grim, like killer guy, but he sounds like he would be in the cubicle next to you, like at the insurance company. I mean, he's just got this, he's like, yeah, I'm a clipper and I kill people. And then the kid's like, oh man, my eyes turn black and I kill people. And I'm like, why am I watching this? And then all of a sudden somebody does like 4 backflips and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I'm watching it, because it's awesome.
Right. You realize once you've come to the end of the series, like, wait, that's it? There's no more?
The whole thing could probably be boiled down to like an hour and 10 minutes of awesome fight scenes and not lose anything. But and Nick Frost, you got to get all Nick Frost in there because he's amazing.
Oh yeah. Oh man, that's great. Well, hopefully we haven't depressed people too much. Hopefully, I didn't make too many people angry. No, I mean, I thought this was good. I thought this was worthwhile us talking about. I'm glad we had the opportunity to do that. Man, we've got 2 more topics. We've got the next 2 weeks planned out, man. When are you headed to Doctrine and Devotion?
That's on the 20th and 21st.
Okay. All right. So, people can expect something unique coming from us from there. Hopefully, we're going to try to work out some details with that, but hopefully we'll get some stuff going with that. But this was good, man. I'm glad we were able to nail that down. And I think one of the things that I've been learning over the past several weeks is just sitting down and having reasonable conversations with people, even if they disagree with you. I talk about my grandfather, and I have several friends who disagree with me on the gun issue, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's not gospel critical for me. But being able to just sit down and have these conversations, I think, is important. I think it allows us to, if anything, refine and hopefully explain our views better. And I know that's a lot of some of the things that I've been doing is having a conversation with someone and, them asking me questions about the things that, I believe in regard to gun control. And it's the same stuff I do with my faith. I go back to the Bible constantly when people ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. I can't rattle off statistics in my head about, gun control and all that. But when people ask me those questions, I make sure that I go and look them up. And it's like, well, get together with them. And, I think it is possible to have intelligent, reasonable conversations with people. I think it's much more difficult to do on Facebook. And I would almost like to see those conversations go away and people having more one-on-one conversations with others. Final thoughts, Zach?
Yeah. No, I don't think there's anything to add other than May 2nd, Cobra Kai is going to be released on YouTube Red.
Stay tuned for These Go to 11 commentary.
Oh, dude, we should binge it while doing commentary on it.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I would totally just rearrange all the recording equipment and set it up to do that.
I'm just saying that, like, during the last third of the podcast today, it sounded like you were rearranging the recording equipment.
Yeah, I gotta fix the chair in here. It's a little wiggly and squeaky. Oh man, dude, good stuff. We're gonna go ahead and sign off now. Zach, we just rocked the Casbah.
These go to 11.